So good morning, everyone. Thank you, Stacey Roshi, for your kind invitation. I don't think I could ever say no to you, unless there was, something unavoidable that I couldn't do. So I appreciate the invitation. It's been wonderful knowing the teachers. I mean, when I started at ZCLA, my Stacey Roshi was still there, but he traveled a lot. So I worked more with uh, Tenshin Seishin Egyoku than um, with Wayu, although he was my official teacher at that time. Then, after his passing, I became Tenshin's student, and it's been a wonderful journey since then. So, Seison's request to talk about my experience of, you know, what's been life in America for the last few years, if not hundreds of years, was an interesting one. So it's a subject that I don't broach very often. Um, but I thought, why not? It's time that I take a look at this within myself and see what happens. So I immediately uh, came up with this title before I wrote the talk because I have no idea. I just figured I'd start there because when you're asked to give a talk, you start thinking about ideas. Of course, the mind is blank. So this title came to mind. I thought, okay, well, let me just put that out there and see what evolves out of that. So you can tell my age because I think I spelled Lil Nas X name as Little Nas X, so I got the name slightly wrong. And I know nothing about him except that one video, which was so controversial that I had to go watch it to see what all the drama was about. Um, and we're living in a time of great polarity. Not that we haven't been here before, but we've worked really hard not to be polarized, and it seems to have been, you know, reborn, if you will. So the question that my title invoked for me is, well, can oneness really be divided? And where do our names come from? Or to put it in kind of koan speak, what was your name before your parents were born? Studying koans, probably familiar with that verbiage more than that. So the bottom line, um, anything that proposes that anything in the universe or the multiverse is separate or even potentially separable is a lie, and it's contrived to serve particular agendas. Those who have vested interest in maintaining those agendas will defend that agenda, often to the point of killing people to protect and perpetuate their interests. These are just facts; they're not new facts. Been doing this for thousands of years. Um, Tenshin Roshi is fond of reminding us that the human race did not get to the top of the food chain by being nice. We've always not been nice to each other, to the planet, to those things around us, and especially those things that we other make, we think are different um, and belong in some hierarchy lower than ourselves. And it becomes justifiable to do whatever it is we do. But those of us who do this practice, and I really appreciate it. Let's make it still on my screen. The change of that line in greatest in Gator's Sweet Nectar. Uh, my own being friends, enemies, family, and community, and all creations for so much done on my behalf. Because it is our enemies also that are included in this conversation. Uh, so those of us who practice this way, we believe that things are perfect just as they are. And if that's true, then no wonder life is suffering. And perhaps the word perfect is extra. Things are just as they are. That's where it starts. That's where we bring our presence to. What Alan Watts said about that. He said, if you understand, things are just as they are. If you don't understand, things are just as they are. So either way, you have to deal with reality just as it is. But you've all taken a vow. Those of us sitting in this room, virtually or physically, have taken a vow to end suffering. That's our job. Um, so now what? What do we do? So oftentimes, people looking at us, if you will, like separate from everybody else, looking at us as Zen practitioners, uh, they're walking in the room doing Zen. It looks peaceful and serene and even passive. But those of us who do this practice know those little stereotypes might occur momentarily in Zazen, but for the most part, Zazen is a call to action, to sit down, shut up the brain, and breathe. And then World Wars 3, 4, and 5 begin as we're on the cushion. So, but by virtue of the fact that we get there, be it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, we win every time. We win, and the universe wins with us because we end suffering just a little bit every time. So we also know as practitioners, this oneness is not at all disturbed. This enlightenment is not at all disturbed by delusion. And oneness is not disturbed by divisions because it contains all of those divisions. The infinite contains all finites, but always in so much more. It's greater than the sum of its part. Also, in fact, we know this. Our names, for the most part, are given to us by others. You know, my first name comes from my parents. As a matter of fact, I'm named after my father. Changed it when I got a Dharma name. And I thought for sure Mazimi Roshi was making fun of me when he gave me that name. I was like, oh, what? I thought I was going to get a cool name. I got Wayu. It's like, it took me a while to learn to like it and live into it. And all the other designations that we get called, you know, African American, cisgender, gay male, pianist poet, human resources director, and the occasional asshole, all come from sources outside of ourselves, or so it seems, and we don't have a lot of control over that. But if you plug all those designations into the Heart Sutra, old age and old age and death, no end to old age and death. If you plug all those designations into that same formula that the Heart Sutra outlines for us, you end up with an emptiness and this glorious, wonderful, undifferentiated everythingness, and without all the attached meanings, because that's where we get stuck. It's making it mean something. So when people say that over there is other than me, and that means that they are less than, or it's okay for me to do whatever it is for me to do to them, that's where the suffering is perpetuated. But yes, even if we get to emptiness with our designations, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stop someone from killing you because of the meaning they have given to the designations that they've bestowed upon you. They call us by their names. So the fortunate, the blessing, if you will, of being born and raised as an African American male by African American parents, we are warned about this, and we're taught how to behave. That is built on a system of racism. So we go out into the world 4 arms. So it's a double message. It sounds like a mixed message. We're told that people are going to dislike you because of the color of your skin, and people may try to kill you. And remember that you have to love everybody. So, so that's the conundrum that I was raised with, in my Christian family. But I'm glad I was. I'm glad I was. That's because I knew what would happen. So when the news coverage of these happenings, which are age old, hundreds of years of this, that another black man has been killed by a white person, white cop, white whomever. This is unfortunately what has become normal. It's even somewhat expected to a certain extent. But still, we find the space, we find the grace to love everybody and not broad brush stereotypes on every single person that we might think do this to us. They're given the opportunity. The Black church wonderfully welcomed their shooter into their midst to worship. That's in the DNA of the African American culture. Gladly welcome you to our homes, to our places of worship, and not expect that you're going to find out and kill us. And continue to be surprised by that. But these designations, these meanings are just opinions, and I love the line from the Zig Zig Mate, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Do not seek truth, only cease to cherish opinions. So the trick is to not cherish while remaining present. So can you, I, be equally present for Mr. Floyd as we can for Mr. Shaw? And equal doesn't necessarily mean the same. Compassion has myriad faces, but if indeed I am not separate from anything or anyone, how am I George Floyd? How am I Derek Chauvin? How am I Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King? How am I Hitler, Mussolini, and Nicholas II? Can we change systemic racism with the same system that created and perpetuated? Um, uh, um, Einstein, that's who said it. That you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. So something has to change. Does it have to be the upheaval of the entire system? We've certainly had revolutions in the past, and it's a scary thought that we may have to do that again. But my latest hero, some of you have heard of this man, Daryl Davis. He's the African American who intentionally went out and befriended members of the KKK. And basically sat and listened and talked and conversed and truly made himself available for a conversation, for dialogue with people who he should by all rights be somewhat afraid of. But he stepped into that fear and made these friends. According to him, over 200 Klansmen gave up their ropes, and I've seen the YouTube where he shows he's some of the worst drugs hanging in his closet. I somehow doubt the official KKK, news feed would actually confirm that claim. But I believe Mr. Davis, I think that he's put himself out there, put himself in danger, possibly, by being willing to do something that very few people are willing to do, and that is sit and be present and listen to someone with whom you may not agree, and who might be dangerous to you. So it's easy to hate, those that you keep separate from. It's easy to talk about people who aren't there. They're easy targets, if you will. They're not there to defend themselves or explain themselves. But in the presence of humanity, in shared space, looking in the faces that existed before our parents were born, it's much harder, if not impossible, not to know on the deepest level that we are indeed inexorably interrelated. So both the system that gave birth to Daryl Davis and the system that gave birth to KKK are the same system. So this would seem to be an example of an opportunity that within the system that we can do something. Whether we can transform it completely, I don't know. But certainly there's still room here. I still think there's something left, some remnants of the American dream, some truth in the statements that our forefathers made, even though I don't think they ever intended it to be this way. All men are created equal, but what was a man had a very specific definition, and it didn't look like me. But now it does. Now we have changed that definition and made it more true to the words that were actually used. So these are my koans. This is what I wrestle with in the bliss and repose of my Zen. This is my call to action. So one of the ways that I answered that call was I actually made a request. I work for Kaiser Permanente, I'm human resources director at one of the facilities in Los Angeles, the Baldwin Park facility. Through the pandemic and and the Floyd incident, we were dealing with a lot of very difficult issues and emotions, and there were a couple of um, people who did not believe that there was any such thing as systemic racism, who actually spoke up in meetings and proceeded to uh, you know present their opinions on what was there, and that was very difficult for a lot of people to listen to. So I specifically asked we have a regional committee, the Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity Committee for Kaiser, that does training on these types of things. I specifically asked, it is time for us to invite the racists to the table. Would you please create some sort of training so that we can create the safe space to have this listening and these conversations? That request was not well received. No surprise, because it's a lot of work and not a focus of what Kaiser does. Kaiser is about healthcare. You would think that we'd want to resolve these issues to forward better healthcare, but it's a lot of money, a lot of trouble. So their response was, "Oh, okay, thank you very much for your suggestion. We'll consider that." But I rarely wait for my employer to resolve these things for myself. So I've done that on my own. And the first thing I did was call the particular doctor that stood up in a meeting and made those statements and said, "Can we talk? Can I listen to what it is you have to say?" I got stopped, and so did the doctor. So that conversation is yet to take place because we were told that we could not have that conversation by the powers that be. I'm going to persist. Our previous solution to this we kind of created a false sense of security for ourselves. Is what we did was marginalized those people that we didn't agree with. We said all the racists, to be quiet, go to their corners. So we shoved them all into the shadows where they grew stronger. And then we had an administration that basically gave them permission to come back out to the light, and they did. And we were surprised and dismayed. But I think we failed to take some level of responsibility for having contributed to the cause of that. So I'm hoping that we don't repeat that mistake again. All of it needs to be, in order for it to heal, it has to, all of these issues, all of these differences have to come out to the light. And if we claim to be truly one, that can't exclude anything, to make sure that we don't leave anyone or anyone or anything out of that conversation. But it's difficult and sometimes not safe. How do we? I think it's a constant question, because it's something that has to be answered in the presence of the moment in which it is occurring. But we have the skills to do that because of this practice. This is what Zazen or any other practice I've been in that prepares us to bear witness, to listen, to be still in the midst of what feels like hell, and to offer its healing. So I think that's unique for us in that respect. I think we win, and we bring that winning to the entire universe here in the United States, in Los Angeles, San Diego, California. So thank you. What say you? How are you dealing with the world as it is? The pandemic, systemic racism. It is different now. To note, I came to ZCLA right after the LA riots. The verdict for Rodney King was that all 4 police officers were acquitted. To him, this time, Mr. Chauvin got 22 years. So, little change, baby steps.